ancient Greece is still alive. Even today, Greek philosophy, Greek politics, Greek language, Greek architecture, Greek writing, and Greek art has shaped the mold of Western civilization, incubated our modern world. But how is it that a little group of self-governing islands grew to dominate the region and influence culture for the rest of time? Why not the Persians, a massive, burgeoning empire that rivaled the Greeks? Athenian culture flourished, while the Achaemenid Persians fell into disrepair and were ultimately conquered by the Greeks. The downfall of the Persian world and the beginning of the Greek world did not start with a bang, nor a whimper. No, it started, like much of history, with a boat full of idiots. Before we begin our story, let's begin with its author, Herodotus of Halicarnassus. Herodotus was born in, well, Halicarnassus, around the year 484 BCE. Just before his birth, his hometown, located in modern Turkey, had been taken over by the Persians. Though he grew up in the shadow of the Greco-Persian War, he was a wealthy, educated, probably preppy young writer, studied in the works of Homer. Wrong Homer. Now, having been born less than a decade after Xerxes' failed campaign into Greece, the world in the time of Herodotus was still shocked at the David versus Goliath victory the Greek city-states had over Persia. Herodotus grew fascinated with this war and the events of recent and not-so-recent history. Thus, he traveled around the ancient world, inquiring about their geography, history, ethnography, even wildlife. Though it is not exactly known if he married or not, he was a father of two. His children, history, and, according to snooty critics like Plutarch, lies. Much of Herodotus' work has been doubted throughout the modern era, for good reason. He did embellish, exaggerate, and report things that he, of course, could not verify. But there are also things he got right before anyone else did, such as the existence of warrior women, a lost royal army, and buried labyrinths. But in the end, it's the gist of the stories that count. Of all the battles in the Greco-Persian War, the Battle of Salamis was considered especially historic. In ancient Ionia, the dedicated historian who investigated these vicious battles conveyed the cultural attitudes of the elite city known as Athens. These are his stories. One reason our friend Herodotus was so unique was that he set out to demythologize history. His time was one still influenced by Homeric epics, which summarized the outcomes of military strategies as, just how the gods are feeling that day. In his efforts to humanize antiquity, he made events center around specific figures. For example, the American Revolution? All George Washington. The Roman Empire? All Julius Caesar. In the Herodotus worldview, great men shaped history. Persians and Greeks had a history of conflict, specifically focused around the Ionian region. However, the real focus of Herodotus' vision of the Greco-Persian War was the Achaemenid king Xerxes. There we go. Xerxes. Now, Xerxes was the son of Darius the Great, who had gained power by overthrowing the Medes. Darius was known for his bloodthirsty reputation, killing families just to prove a point. Xerxes wasn't any better. Darius died before he could fulfill his revenge on the Greeks, specifically the Athenians, for their siege of Sardis and the Ionian Revolt. Therefore, to fulfill his father's wish and live up to his legacy, Xerxes, after some advice from his council and some convincing dreams, set sails for Greece. Now, unfortunately, the Greco-Persian War is poorly recorded on the Persian side, so our narrative is mostly shaped by the Greeks, who took pride in their underdog status. Thus, when the Persians had a majority, they had a majority in the millions. As Herodotus explained, all of the efforts of Darius were doubled by Xerxes. According to histories, Xerxes would congratulate himself on how blessed he was for his army, apparently 2.5 million strong. In order to access the dominant forces of the region, Athens and Sparta, Xerxes had to enter Boeotia, the entrance of which was Thermopylae, or the Hot Gates. This narrow mountain pass was guarded by a small force of Greeks who were able to stave off the Persians for 7 days. The Greeks were led by a legendary Spartan named Leonidas. There we go. Right. Leonidas, or Leonidas, whose genealogy apparently fascinated Herodotus, as the following is a full quote from Book 7. The leader of the whole army was a Lacedaemonian, Leonidas, son of Anaxandridas, the son of Leon, the son of Eurycratides, the son of Anaxandros, the son of Eurycrites, the son of Polydorus, the son of Alcamenes, the son of Teleclus, the son of Archelaus, the son of Hersilogus, the son of Dorisus, the son of Leobotus, the son of Echestratus, the son of Agis, the son of Eurysthenes, the son of Aristodemus, the son of Aristomachus, the son of Cleodes, the son of Hylos, who was the son of Heracles. Anyway, so the Greeks were able to fend off the Persians, despite being outnumbered by a few 100,000. However, the Persians were assisted by the traitorous Ephialtes. Whoa, no, definitely not him. That's not even close. There we go. Jeez. So, Ephialtes showed the Persians a path around the Greeks to attack them from the other side. The Spartans remained while all the other Greeks retreated. Leonidas and his men died in a bloody last stand. If you're squeamish, I urge you to avert your eyes. With the gateway to Greece shattered open, Xerxes went on the warpath. The Persian naval fleet was meant to be countered by a joint Greek force at the Cape of Artemisium. Even with a third of the Persian fleet destroyed by a storm, they were still able to come to a tactical draw with the Spartan, Athenian, and Corinthian ships. The great city of Athens evacuated and was seized by the Persians, and the Greeks were forced to flee to Salamis. The scattered Greeks were on the brink, and were counting on big victories at Artemisia and Thermopylae. The fate of Greece, and perhaps all of Europe, seemed to be resting on the island of Salamis. With such high stakes, and their very existence on the line, what were the Greeks doing? Bickering. The last vestige of the last Greek stronghold, and they were bickering. For days. Reaching no conclusion. One side, including the Athenians, argued that they should stay at Salamis, draw in the Persian ships, destroy them, and isolate their land force. The other side, including the Spartan leader of the group, Eurybiades, argued that not only does Athens have no say, considering they lost their city, but that they should instead engage the Persians on land. Ultimately, they were more backed up than Congress. Enter Oh, come on, really? That guy isn't even Greek. And what's with the lack of armor? All right, there. Enter Themistocles, an Athenian politician and general. At Salamis, someone mentioned to him that those who start too early at Olympic races are flogged. He replied, those who start too slowly don't win. In other words, he was an asshole. Now, Themistocles believed the Athenian side to be right, that the navy was first priority, as the Persian naval fleet could attack the Peloponnesian coastline if left unattended. Finding himself outvoted, Themistocles did what any rational person would do. Go behind the backs of his superiors and send a message to the enemy. At a nearby Persian encampment, a servant of Themistocles told the Persians that the Hellenes feared Xerxes and would be too busy arguing to rise against the Persians if they were to attack. The Persians, who strongly valued telling the truth, accepted this message and set sail for Salamis. The Greek, Themistocles? Well, he was full of shit. After initially refusing to believe that the Persians were actually coming, the Greeks saw the Persian threat and rallied their ships. The fleet moved towards the Persians, who began to attack. The Greeks, seeing how outnumbered they were and how large their ships were, all fell back. Well, almost all. One Athenian ship, manned by Amenius, barreled towards the Persians and right into the enemy ships. The other Hellenes had no other choice but cease their retreat and engage. Thus, with just a boat full of idiots, the Battle of Salamis had begun. Many crucial battles throughout history seem almost to come alive on the page. They exude a cinematic quality and have an epic, romantic air to them. Yet, if the Battle of Salamis was a movie, it would most certainly be a farce. The Persian ships were already too large for the shallow, narrow coast of Salamis, and they were constantly crashing among themselves as the Greeks nimbly sailed around them. One particularly famous story is that of Artemisia of Halicarnassus. No, actually, that's not too bad. Could use some sleeves, though. She was a naval commander under Xerxes, very rare for a woman in the ancient world, yet Xerxes held her in high regard. The following story has two main versions. The first version is that Artemisia, tailed by a Greek trireme, couldn't escape because there were too many allied ships in the way. Thus, she cleverly crashed her own ship into an ally ship, the crew of which drowned. The Greek pursuer thought she was a fellow Greek and left. Xerxes, watching proudly from afar, thought she had crashed into a Greek ship, and her pursuer was so terrified he fled. Thus she was able to live another day. The alternate story? She crashed accidentally, and the rest was blind luck. As the chaotic hijinks continued, a group of Phoenicians fighting for Persia told Xerxes that the Ionian fleet caused theirs to sink. They even accused them of treason. Xerxes watched the Ionians in combat and saw one of their ships ram and sink an enemy, get sunk by another enemy, then hijack that enemy's ship using their javelins. Xerxes concluded that the Phoenicians were at fault and ordered them all to be beheaded. Xerxes don't play around. But neither did the Greeks. Though they argued, one Aeginetan calling Themistocles a sympathizer, and the Athenians accusing the Corinthians of fleeing, the Greeks nonetheless were able to do the impossible and defeat Xerxes. Xerxes, after this pivotal defeat, and at the advice of Artemisia, left his second-in-command Mardonius to continue fighting and retreat. The invasion would only stretch on a year after that, as Mardonius would die at the Battle of Plataea. The Greeks did not pursue Xerxes during his retreat at the advice of Themistocles, who actually was trying to curry personal favor among the Persians. Again, Themistocles was the worst. On his return home, Xerxes' ship was caught in a terrible storm. His helmsman said there was no way they'd make it unless they threw some passengers overboard. Xerxes, according to legend, asked the Persian elites to prove their loyalty, and they all leapt into the ocean. Herodotus doubts the story, but only because he thinks the rowers would be thrown overboard, not the highborn. Nonetheless, when they returned to Asia, Xerxes gave the helmsman a golden crown for saving him, then cut off his head for causing the death of his men. That's Xerxes! And that's the end of the arguable climax of Herodotus' histories. If the Persians had defeated the Greeks at Salamis, the final bastion of Greece would be Sparta, and with the added power and momentum of the Persian navy, the Persians could very well have taken them. Without the Greeks, there would be no Alexander the Great to conquer the Achaemenid Empire of Persia. In fact, when deciding whether to war with Athens, Xerxes told his council that he wished to use Greece as a gate to conquer all of Europe, as he put it, to make a single territory. Who knows what would have become of Rome or Western civilization as a whole? The Battle of Salamis is the turning point of a losing war for the Greeks, who seem to have been one of the few things keeping Xerxes away from the rest of Europe. Both ancient powers would later crumble to invasion and war, but it is important that we remember their stories, as Herodotus put it, so that human events do not fade with time. May the great and wonderful deeds not go unsung. And here we are, singing of their deeds, 2,500 years later.